Welcome to Homestead Reptile. Today I want to talk to you guys about which New Caledonian gecko is the best pet and also which one is the most popular throughout the hobby. So which one do I think is the best pet for someone who has never kept a reptile before and is just getting in? I would say the crested gecko would be your number one option. Your second best option would be the gargoyle. Your third would be the Chihuahua. Fourth would be Sarasahorn. Then we have the Leachianus would be the absolute last. Then I put the chameleon gecko. But that's which ones I personally think would be the easiest to care for someone who is completely new to reptiles. Now, which one is the most popular? Crested gecko. The crested gecko just has so much more available out the gate. And when you're someone new coming into something and you look, oh, I'm looking at crested geckos, and you're like, oh, there's ones with big heads, there's lily whites, there's bright red ones, there's tiger striped ones, there's Dalmatians, there's extreme harlequins, there's cappuccinos. There's so many color mutations, patterns, spots, head structure. There's just so much coming out with crested geckos right now that even though they're not the biggest gecko, they're definitely the king of New Caledonian geckos. When anyone thinks New Caledonian gecko, they think of crested geckos. So they're the gecko on the picture of the New Caledonian gecko food, which was formulated for crested geckos, but since all New Caledonian geckos eat pretty much about the same diet, minus that some might need a little bit more protein, some might need a little bit less protein, that kind of a thing. So out the gate, they're generally the best ones to get if you're new in the hobby and you don't know much about geckos and it's just a new thing. The second best gecko, and if you don't want a crested gecko, you're feeling adventurous, you don't mind that there's just less color mutations and there's less patterns available, is the gargoyle gecko. So these guys really just have two types of patterns. You got stripe and you got reticulated. Those are two wild type patterns that over the time since they've been in captivity have been selectively bred to be more and more exaggerated. And then you have your base colors. You have red base, you can have a yellow base, you can have a white and black base. And then you got shades in between, so you can get pinker geckos, a pink base. So there's a lot that you can have with them, but it is still somewhat of a limited pool from what you can pull from. So the gargoyle gecko is quite a bit different from the crested gecko. Diet's pretty much about the same. The gargoyle geckos might want to eat a little bit more protein, but you can always just give them a few more insects. It's pretty much about the same. Cares about the same too. It is actually the same. So the gargoyle gecko. They are generally a lot more calmer. They don't jump around. They're a lot more stationary. They're pretty calm. Not much more to say about it. I have 3 right now. I'm very new with them still, so we'll have to see as their personalities change and as they get older. So, I would say the third most popular New Caledonian gecko is the Chihuahua. So the Chihuahua, to me, in my opinion, is like the small lychee. And the price point's a little bit better too. So they're not as expensive. They have some unique wild type color patterns that are been bred over time to be more exaggerated. So like a white collared Chihuahua. They have them in the wild, those white collars, but in captivity they are being selectively bred to be whiter and whiter, to be whiter and whiter, and just to have like some different color palettes. You have mossy green ones, you can have ones with some hint of pink, and they only really develop those colors right when they're at adulthood. So as a baby, they are going to be boring. They're just going to be boring. But they're a big, lanky gecko, big tail. If those tails come off, they can regrow. The crested gecko is the only one that if the tail comes off, it will never regrow. Everyone else's tail will regrow. Don't know why it's just the crested gecko thing, but it is what it is. They generally have pretty decent attitudes from what I've heard. Now, I think this is, I would say, the Leachianus is again, is a little less popular than the Chihuahua. And I'm really just thinking that's because of several factors. So they're difficult to breed. They got some bad attitude, and they got a bad reputation. So when you are looking at New Caledonian geckos and you hop on the Leastianus, you think this thing is amazing. It's a giant gecko. Then you find out they got bad attitudes, and it's a big gecko, big bite, no fun. Then we have the chameleon gecko. So the chameleon gecko is becoming more popular. They're just a small little gecko. They're very unique looking. They're a little micro gecko. And then the least popular out of all the New Caledonian geckos is the Sarasahorn. So I find this sad. The chameleon gecko hasn't been in the hobby as long as the Sarasahorn. In our morph market, the chameleon gecko has its own tab. The Sarasahorn does not. It's in the miscellaneous geckos, where you have to search through all these other geckos to find the Sarasahorn. They don't have many color mutations. They don't. They just have wild type and exaggerated traits very similar to the Chihuahua, but they're less pretty. They have white color, the white spots, and patternless. And they're shades of yellowish brown to more brown to a blackish color. So they're very limited in that color palette. They look like a crested gecko without crests, and they're just not as popular for whatever reason. They just aren't. Well, I kind of know why they're not. They generally have a pretty good disposition. They're not super flighty. They're not known to be biters or cage aggressive. They're pretty nice geckos. So if you want to get something different, but something that looks like a crested gecko, you can always go for that. It is a it's an uncommon one to see very often. Like and subscribe and leave a comment.